welcome to Digital Word podcast. Here with me, we have a very interesting personality in the tech sphere. We welcome Kevin all the way from Canada, and we're here to discuss more about software development, computer engineering, and a lot more. So before we even go further, I would like to get to know Kevin a little bit more. Kevin, tell us about your experience in the IT sphere.
All right. Hi, Tony. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Kevin Sanchez Lacroix. I'm based in Montreal, in Canada, Quebec. I speak French and English, and I graduated 2 years ago from Sherbrooke University in computer engineering. Basically, the nice thing about that, we call it a baccalaureate. The good thing about that degree is that we actually had as many internships as we had like study sessions, study trimesters. Basically, so I had like maybe one session where I studied, one trimester where I studied, then an internship, then a session where I studied, and it just alternates like that. So I could have I had the opportunity to do 5 internships during my whole degree.
Wow.
It was very beneficial, which is basically where I learned everything, right? The joke was that the trimesters were just excuses in between the internship, because that's really how well, for me, that's how I learn most, is when I just do it, you know. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah. So I think we have a bit of a delay, but the internships, I guess I could go over maybe what I did during the internships briefly. So for the first one was more research. I did 8 months of research for a company here in Quebec City.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. It was in AR, so augmented reality, in Unity, so a lot of C# and stuff like that. More like scripting, more prototyping, less code reviews and testing and stuff like that, more prototyping research, which was very fun, and I learned a lot. I was very independent in that, so really leading the project by myself. Then after that, I went for a bigger company. I had a more, we could say, classic type of job where I did also C#, but since it was a big company, I was just like another member of a team. Wasn't testing, but more like adding features, bugs. I learned how to use Git and like the basics of like the agile method for team management and stuff like that. And then I went and worked for a startup where I did also research. It was also research, but it was more prototyping again. But since it was a startup, I had more an immediate role. I did some UI development for some medical machine. After that, I had my other internship was for a startup, but this one was really a smaller startup. The first one was like 50 employees, so it was like in the process of scaling. And then the one after, I was actually the 4th employee. So it was very like the beginning of the company, which meant that I had to basically set up the whole infrastructure side of things. So that's where I learned more DevOps, CI/CD pipelines, Kubernetes, Docker, etc. Really like the infrastructure in a company that was about to scale. I worked at that company after I graduated. I was hired, so I stayed there for another year and a half. And since now with all that experience, what I had is I saw basically how you start a company, and after that, how you scale it.
Yeah.
So now I'm starting my own business with some friends here, and really what I found is that all my internships kind of built everything I needed to kind of start on my own right now, which is where I'm at right now.
Wow, it really sounds like you've the education system over there is really streamlined to ensure that you know, like students are really engaged in internships. Because I'm trying to compare and and find out like what is really not working out for most programmers and all the students that are in the tech industry. Why don't they have as much experience while at a really young age compared to people in the West? Anyways, just to get back to a little, backwards, you mentioned internships. So, many of the people here, especially here where I am right now in Russia, are very, very curious to know what takes place while doing the internship. If you could give us more light and more information step by step of what are the steps, how could they really get involved, how could they enter some firm startups, and yeah, just give us a few requirements.
Basically, there's two ways to get into internships. Since my school was really, as you said, it was streamlined, so they had a whole department in the school where it's like they were managing the internship, the relationship between the employers and the students, and there was a platform where we put our CVs and job offers and stuff like that. So it was very easy for us to get internships. We still had to go to the classic interview process, but there was a whole system in place. So it's not like
already set over there.
Sorry?
It's already set over there, like the whole platform. You know exactly when you finish, like the first year, where you're going, etc. Right?
Yeah, you know. Basically, the way it works is that during the semester, there's actually a week when the job offers open up. Everyone starts applying, and it becomes like that's the big thing that week. Everyone is like talking about the different job offers and stuff like that. And then after that, there's a week of interviews. So the employers actually come to the school, and there's a whole building that's built for that. So that's very beneficial, but it's not like everywhere. It was like a particularity of that specific school, and that model is actually being replicated in a lot of places right now, because the employees that came out of that school were better because of that. So it's being replicated right now. That's actually maybe just a bit of a side note. What we're doing with Digital World is actually in that vein. We're trying to kind of replicate that model, but digitally, in order for you to get a job afterwards. The other way to get an internship, if you don't have that whole system set up, is really to just go on some job board sites. There's many of them, and you just type internships. And what will happen usually is that the internship is going to be, it's not going to be paid as much. The duration will vary between 4 and maybe a year of internship. But it's really the salary that decreases because you're not as efficient. You don't necessarily know everything before you apply. They know they'll have to onboard you in a longer process. So the pay is not as much. It's really to get experience. That's the point.
Interesting. So is your education, related to your job, your current job? Do you have some cases where somebody is, say, in a totally different sphere, but ends up at the same company because of his hard skills?
It's actually funny that you say that, because as I said, my degree is in computer engineering, which is not exactly the same thing as software engineering. But since the market demands software engineering, all the job offers were pretty much software engineering. We did have like coding skills, so we could do it, but our coding skills were more low-level, embedded programming, C, C++, electricity, closer to the machine, if you say. But then the software engineering is higher level, building applications with design patterns and stuff like that. So you do have to study on your own if you want to be able to. That's why we say that we learned everything in the internships, because at the end of the day, we're all becoming software engineers, software developers, even though we went on a parkour that wasn't exactly that. It was close enough, right?
Wow, it makes a lot of sense. I also have so many questions here from many of the people in tech asking me about salary levels. Like, could you comment? Could you tell us a little bit about? Give us some insight when it comes to what sort of salaries are we looking at over there, and you also compare those salaries with the standards of living, say in Canada.
What's interesting about that is that the salaries vary quite a lot depending on the actual tech stack that you know, right? So it can, like, if you're just a normal web developer, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, it can range from 30K Canadian to maybe 80, 90K Canadians. And you can get averages of those numbers on websites like Glassdoor, stuff like that. You can do Google searches and find, like, for every tech stack, what's the demand in terms of how they're going to pay you. But if you do something like Kubernetes or blockchain development, something that's more cutting edge and in demand, then it can go up to maybe 100K. And then that's for maybe, I would say junior, not entry level, because you have entry level, junior, senior, in terms of like the different level of programmers. And if you're a senior, then you can also become a team lead and be paid even more. And that whole range, let's say from entry level to senior team lead, would be between, depending on the technology, but it could be from all the way down from 30K to maybe 200K.
Okay.
You go to the States, then that's even higher.
All right. So what's your current level? How would you?
My current level was basically, since I work for a startup, that's another thing. If you work for a startup, it's more fun, but it's not paid as much. So for me, but I say not paid as much, but it was 65K Canadian a year.
Oh, that's very interesting compared to the salaries that are over here. But of course, the standard of living kind of balances that out, I guess.
Yeah, but let's say right now, since I'm an entrepreneur, I'm starting my business. I don't spend as much, so I could give you like what I'm spending right now every month in order to live is 2K a month.
Okay.
And I did make 65K a year, so that gives you a rough idea of how much I could put money aside. Just kind of entry level, cutting edge field, because I was entry level, but in Kubernetes and everything. So that's a cutting edge field. So that was about 60K, which was lower than like the 100K you would get for a big company if you have a bit more experience.
Okay. Also, I'd like to find out how often do you improve your skills? Because I understand that this field that we're talking about today is like very, very dynamic. It keeps changing. There's a lot of like new stuff coming in. How do you control all that, and how do you keep having that edge over other competitors?
You said how often do you need to improve? Is all the time, right?
All the time.
Yeah, that you can't stagnate, really. There's technologies that like won't go out of fashion completely. Some things like Java, C#, you'll always be able to do something with that, but we need always to keep up with the standards. It doesn't mean that you always need to go back to university. It's just like watching YouTube videos and making some side projects and trying new things, or expanding into different horizons. Because even if you, let's say, use a single stack, let's say you're a React developer, right? You do front end in React, that's not going away. It's actually growing. But then there's maybe new libraries. Maybe you want to improve your skills in networking to interface with your API. There's different kind of spheres where you can expand your knowledge within a single tech stack to just be able to understand more layers of what you're doing. It's going to help you land a job afterwards, because you know the whole thing, right? If all you can do is interfaces, but like you're not really good with the stateful application, or you don't know anything about microservices, stuff like that are going to help you. Just keep looking at maybe blogs, maybe find a a programmer's blog that you like and just keep up with it just casually. And then when there's something new and interesting, maybe try it out. Just improve.
Okay. You know, here at Digital Word, we really emphasize trying to bridge the gap between, you know, different, you know, regions, continents, and many people really like to find out. The bigger question here is language such a big barrier when it comes to your area? Because many of our people over here don't really, they're not so proficient in English. So they would like to understand in order to get, say, a job over there or to relocate. Is it such a big deal? Or if he just comes with his really good hard skills, is that enough to get him into one of his companies?
If you only have hard skills, it's not going to be easy for you to get a job. If you only have hard skills, you better be very, very good at it and have like a crazy GitHub to compensate. But you're going to need good communication skills. Actually, that's one of the main things that they watch for. If you let's say we're going to take the FANG for example, right? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, all of those, Google, they have like always maybe between 3 and 5 different interview steps. Maybe the first interview you'll have will be just to feel you, understand what dynamic you could bring to the team. So if you're not able to communicate efficiently, even if you're good, but if you can talk with them, it's not going to work because it's going to be harder for the team to work with you. So that's oftentimes that's the first step, right? Before they even try and test your hard skills. So you need some good soft skills, a CV that makes sense in order to get to the next level.
Okay, very well. So does that really mean that, okay, besides English, is there a platform that kind of you could give our viewers, you know, some insight where they could, you know, just get the jobs maybe from LinkedIn? You know, we don't really use LinkedIn over here. So is it such a big to have a very good profile with some good background and, you know, very eloquent way of presenting yourself?
But there's like there's two things, right? You can, if you don't have experience, you're gonna have to have like a good amount maybe of projects that you did, or you're gonna have to shoot at your level basically. But of course, the profile that you have on those platforms is going to be important. So the CV is going to be important, well worded, clear, to the point. Just here's who I am. It's very clear who I am. Looks good. The words that are used are relevant to them. You talk about teamwork. You talk about writing documentation. You talk about the things that they care about, and also diversify. Try a lot of platforms. You mentioned LinkedIn, which is less used on your side. It's used a lot over here. There's others. I know personally though most of the ones I know are from the States. Things like there's Angel.co, which is a platform for specifically for startups, which is what I'm interested in. There's another platform. It's Y Combinator, which is an incubator, but they also like for all the businesses they're incubating can put their job offers on there. So it's related to hackernews.com. So if you go to hackernews.com, you'll find links. There's a jobs up there, and there's others. There's other. I could send you a list of of those you know after, and you could put that in the description.
Nice. So you mentioned you've worked for very many like startups and some companies. I'm very curious to find out if there are a number of foreigners in those companies, especially those that are out, say from Asia or from say, you know, totally different backgrounds. Do you have many of those?
There's two different things. First, there's a lot of immigration here in Montreal. So the immigrants, and even though here the primary language is French, we also do need to speak English when we go work for those big companies, because they have a lot of immigrants that don't speak French, mostly speak English, and we need to all be able to communicate. So even here where it's French, I think it's the same way in many big cities around the world. And the other thing is that oftentimes those companies will have branches abroad. So if there's a company that's in the state but that has branches abroad, it's going to be easier for you to get in, because probably the local language is going to be maybe not enough. They might ask you to speak both in case you're working with people from the States or from another country where you also need English as the common language. That's pretty much my experience with maybe remote workers. But also maybe one other thing, the startup I worked for before was in the process of finding programmers in Brazil. I think they wanted programmers in Brazil, because the advantage when you're in a more remote country where the currency isn't worth as much is that you're not as expensive to a company, and you're just not as expensive for them. And since the standard of living, the price is lower, then for you it's like the same. Maybe you can get the same standard of living where you are, even though you cost them less. So if you have good skills and you can speak English well, then it might even be easier for you to land a job, because they're actually looking to hire. Because over here in Canada and the US, I guess we're picky with with our jobs.
Okay. Is it really easy to adapt? Say if somebody from where I am right now decided to relocate and was in the tech industry, how quick would he adapt? And if not, what do you think are the possible steps he would take, to quickly and easily assimilate with people over there?
It really depends on the culture, I would say. I think one of the things that I like when I talk with people that aren't from here is when they show interest in my culture. So just doing some quick research, just on Wikipedia, figuring out what was the language there, was the history there, or even just asking them questions about their history. People usually care about their history, where they come from, where they're going. They have opinions. Just to be interested and open to the differences. Maybe at first, it might shock you the way they interact. Just sometimes the little things are different in the customs. So you'll just get a feel for the temperament of the people that are there, and just be open to reciprocate the same way that they do.
Okay. So as an entrepreneur, and you have your own startup over there, how do you handle the question of security when it comes to your say infrastructure, and how do you ensure that you don't have any people breaking in, and let's say you have employees from, like you said, Brazil or from different countries? Could you just tell us how you go about that?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I did some security classes at university, and I've always kind of cared about security and privacy. I like everything that's open source. I like to own my data, so I'm careful with. I call that the digital hygiene. Strong passwords, stuff like that. And but the company I'm starting right now is not strictly tech, so there's a lot of non-tech people in there. So I'm kind of the IT guy as well as the CTO, and just it's so shocking to me sometimes how little they care about security. So a lot of it is coaching, because the single greatest source of weakness for security in an infrastructure is it's always the human being, right?
Yeah.
Clicks on a spam email, gets in your network. It's always stuff like that. So it's about coaching first, but also implementing good design practices. We'll probably need to hire someone that's full-time security, because I can do a little bit. I can be careful, and since we're small right now, we're not subject to attacks. But as soon as the company grows and start getting traction, then you're gonna get traction from bad actors also. So you need to have planned for this.
Okay. So as a modern employer, what what are your top 3 requirements that you would you'd look into when you're going to hire somebody in your field? What are you looking at as an employee?
Yeah, that's a good question. What we're gonna start with while hiring people, well, first we're gonna look at what we need in terms of hard skills, right, to write the job description. But then we're gonna look first for the fit of the people that we hire in the team. Like, how are they going to interact with us? Is it going to be a pain to work with them, to get them to do anything? Or are we going to have a good relationship? So for us here, the first thing is the fit for the team. And even like if the person has a good history of being able to solve problems, and even if they don't have the specific technology, hard skills, like we could get over that in just doing some training inside. Like we could teach them like the specifics of maybe we use Kubernetes. So we're like, I know Kubernetes. I have a course for Kubernetes. That's what I'm doing with one of my guys right now. I gave him the course and I'm answering his questions, but he was a very good fit for our team. And now he's working very hard. Give him some things to ramp up his knowledge. But once he has the knowledge, well, we already know he's a good fit for the team.
Okay, so would you ever refer to any recruitment services, or it's clearly just under technical know-who, friends of friends of friends, what comes first? Like, is it, could you give us more insight on that?
You mean where we get the employees?
Yeah, do you have some friends, or your first case scenario would be going to an agency who will particularly look for and filter all these people out?
Well, I could speak for myself personally for the company that I'm building right now. We are going to friends first. We're trying to find people in our network that we know personally, because we want a strong foundation. But that's not the only way. That's not the only good way to go about it. Going through an agency and trying to put out job descriptions is something we're going to do as we scale. But we're starting with maybe closer people, just to make sure just to make sure we know the person before. Because there's stories about employees that were hired that they thought they were good. And then like I could use an example actually with the previous startup I worked for. We hired a guy, I'm not gonna name him, and but we gave him some stuff to do. And as we worked with him, we just had conversations, sprint reviews and like scrum meetings in the morning, and things were moving, right? We could see that there was progress on the app that he was supposed to do, but he couldn't explain anything. And we just thought it was weird at first, but then we realized that this guy was actually like a con artist. Like he would hire others to do the job that we hired him for. And he was trying to play a bunch of companies at the same time. It actually broke the non-disclosure agreement, and we had to fire him. So that's one example of what can happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a nice one. I'm glad he didn't get far away with that.
Yeah, I'm glad too.
So another one is, here in Russia, generally we have a tendency, especially for the youth, to want to relocate. We have some very good programmers with very good hard skills, but there's a lot of issues, especially with the language barrier. So would you suggest that learning more technical side of English would be very helpful, or just general English, just to get us?
That's a good question, because English is actually not that hard. In terms of grammar, it's complicated, but there's a lot of exceptions and everything. So you can get a lot. I think having a proper course is the best way to kind of get the foundations. but then practice is the most important thing. So what I did to learn English very young was, well, first of all, we had English courses in high school, and I started watching my movies in English with subtitles at first, and then you remove the subtitles, and then it gets in, and you do my research. I put my my phone, I switched it to English. My computer, I switched it to English. Just living in English. But then what's missing there is that you don't talk, right? So you can get a good understanding, but then if you want to have a more proper way of expressing yourself in English, you're going to need to have conversations with native speakers, and that coupled with a good basic understanding of the grammar is going to be the best way to have proficient skills.
Okay, would sources like, say, YouTube be very helpful?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I thought it was just, over here. Anyways, yeah, we're coming to the end of this really fruitful short podcast, slash interview. And what is your advice for people seeking to relocate in Canada, especially in the tech field? Those that are coming to Digital Word for help, just give them a few nuggets over there.
I'll say there's really two things. There's the soft skills and the hard skills, right? So if you want to relocate, what I would advise is to get those two nailed down. For the hard skills, if you don't have a lot of experience yet, figure out what you want to do. So just do a quick research on the market. I mentioned Glassdoor for the salaries. Just have an idea of what's in demand right now, and also what's not just a trend, right? So you could, there's Stack Overflow, you know the website, right? For the answers and for the questions related to tech. They do a yearly survey of what developers use. So they have, let's say, what's the most popular programming language right now? And you can see, like, every year, what is it, and those that come back, right? Or those that are most in use, and those that stayed for the longest, or those that are more trendy. Just find a niche, find some job descriptions, and try to make projects geared toward the kind of industry you want to work in. There's so many options. It's a vast field. Find a niche, develop your hard skills while you're learning the language, soft skills, how to make a resume and stuff like that, and then just start applying.
Great.
Start applying early also. Start applying early. Even though you have hard skills, yeah, just throw them CVs out there.
Nice. So yeah, most of our users at here at Digital Word would definitely love to hear from you in future, and to get in touch with you. Do you have any handles? Definitely we'll invite you for more interactions with our clients over here. But could you give us some sort of resources about how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course. I don't really use Instagram or Twitter. I'm kind of off these days. So for me, professionally, it would be LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to add me on LinkedIn. It's my full name, Kevin Sanchez Lacroix. So Sanchez is SANCHEZ, and Lacroix is LACROIX.
We'll add it in the description just down.
Yeah.
So.
Good. So it's the same on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Lovely. Really, really nice. It was such a nice one. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you really soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Tony.
You're welcome.